Let's just jump right into it. For over 70 years, we've all been sold this very specific, universally accepted story about the Anunnaki, right? We're told they came from the stars, descending from the sky to shape humanity. I mean, literally every alternative history book points firmly upward. But what if the entire foundation of that story was based on a simple, massive misunderstanding of spatial direction? The evidence we're digging into in this explainer today has the potential to completely flip everything we thought we knew right on its head.
So, what if the sky gods actually came from below? Today, we're tracking a fascinating historical detective story, and it sets up a massive paradigm shift based entirely on some newly translated and, frankly, highly controversial source material. We're looking at a text that boldly claims the Anunnaki didn't come from above us at all. They came from the earth below. And here's the kicker. This wasn't described in vague metaphors or poetic symbols. The text details a literal physical entrance, exact depth measurements, and a whole underground room system sitting right beneath modern-day southern Iraq.
For the longest time, the traditional translation of Anunnaki has been accepted as those who came from the sky to earth. End of story, right? Well, not quite. Enter Dr. Hendrik Lemmers, a brilliant Sumerian language expert who found something absolutely shocking when he was translating a text known as Tablet MS-3674. Now, Lemmers wasn't looking to stir up trouble. He was literally just cataloging fragments that got scattered during the tragic 2003 Baghdad museum looting. But his 2009 translation of this one specific tablet, it completely rewrote the cosmic myth.
It all comes down to how we read the ancient cuneiform symbols. It's kind of like a giant puzzle. The symbol On is typically translated as sky or heaven, but On is also a spatial directional word meaning up. In tablet MS-3764, Lemmers noticed On was preceded by Kai, which means earth or dirt. When you put those together in this specific grammatical sequence, the combined meaning completely flips. It doesn't mean from sky to earth, it translates directly and incredibly specifically to from below the upper world.
It's wild how one single translation shift alters the whole picture. Lemmers translated 12 lines of this tablet, titling it The Descent Path of the Anunnaki. And as we break down the very first line, it becomes crystal clear that this text isn't detailing some magical or cosmic journey through space. Not at all. It's describing a physical, heavily engineered structure, a literal doorway straight into the earth.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer geographical precision the Sumerians provided. The very first line gives us actual usable math coordinates. It places this entrance exactly 7,000 cubits southwest of the main temple in the ancient city of Eridu, which, by the way, is cited in records as the world's very first city. Since a Sumerian cubit is about 52 centimeters, this puts the entrance precisely 3.6 kilometers away from the Eridu ruins. So, I know exactly what you're wondering. If we have the coordinates, why isn't someone just walked out there with a shovel? Well, the reality of modern geopolitics makes that practically impossible. This exact location sits smack in the middle of the border desert of Iraq's modern Daikar province. It remains completely hidden and totally unexcavated for one very specific reason. This entire area has been a strictly enforced, highly restricted military zone since the 1980s. No one is getting in there.
But even if we can't go there, the tablet tells us exactly what is waiting beneath those restricted sands. The text reads, and I quote, "This opening leads to a room of cold stone, where the water of the Abzu meets the vastness of the surface." You see, mainstream experts almost always dismiss the Abzu as this mythical, primeval sea, just a story. But here, the Abzu isn't a myth. It is vividly described as a quiet, cold, and very real subterranean space.
And the tablet doesn't just stop at giving us a moody atmosphere. It literally gives us the architectural blueprints. It states the depth of this opening is 4 ninda and 6 cubits. Doing the math, that means this shaft drops straight down for about 27 meters. This is absolutely crucial to understand. The text is not describing a natural, winding cave system. It is describing a perfectly vertical, purposely constructed subterranean drop.
And the evidence pointing to a highly advanced facility only gets stronger from there. The sixth line of the text details the materials lining the walls of this 27-meter deep shaft. And what they used is just completely bizarre and anomalous for standard ancient Sumerian architecture. It makes zero sense for the time period. The text specifically notes that the walls were made of smooth copper and obsidian.
Now here is why that is such a massive deal. Obsidian does not naturally occur anywhere near Mesopotamia. The nearest source for it was up in Anatolia, which is over 1,000 kilometers away. It had to be imported at a massive cost, and was usually reserved exclusively for precious religious artifacts or really fine tools. To put that into perspective, the immense logistical effort required to import Anatolian obsidian just to line the walls of a dark, underground shaft is absolutely staggering.
Which brings us to the next obvious question. How on earth did they see inside this pitch-black obsidian shaft? Well, the seventh line describes light sources that didn't rely on fire. It's translated as stones that glow without flame. We actually see a nearly identical description of ethereal, glowing stones in subterranean tunnels in the Epic of Gilgamesh. For decades, experts just assumed that was poetic imagery. But tablet MS3764 frames this glowing stone not as magic, but as practical, physical technology.
The irony of all this is brilliantly captured in the 8th line. It casually states that the Anunnaki used this path to simply come up when the surface world called upon them and to go back down when their work was finished. I mean, really think about that for a second. This isn't the awe-inspiring, majestic language of celestial gods descending in chariots of fire. This is literally a description of a daily commute. They lived below, came up for their shift, and went back down.
Now, if this was indeed a physical, technological facility beneath the Earth, it would obviously require massive upkeep. And as we strip away the mythology and look at other museum fragments, they reveal exactly that. The incredibly mundane reality of everyday facility maintenance being done by the local human population. So, by 2010, Dr. Lemmers started connecting MS3764 to other known historical texts. One of them is a British Museum fragment, BM54862, originating from a temple in the city of Ur. Slipped right in among lists of regular religious offerings to Enki, it explicitly mentions the maintenance of the lighting system. Not worship, not reverence, routine maintenance. They were treating these flameless glowing stones exactly like machinery that required practical repair.
And we even know exactly who was doing those repairs. Data from another fragment at the Oriental Institute breaks down a dedicated labor force known as the Abzu gatekeepers. The historical records showed their organized shift work, their specific tool distributions, and their daily rations. These weren't priests chanting spells in a temple. They were blue-collar Sumerian laborers literally clocking in to keep this subterranean system running smoothly.
What's truly astonishing here is the sheer scale of time this operation covered. According to these texts, Sumerian workers actively maintained this facility for over a millennium, stretching from roughly 2900 BC all the way to 2004 BC. For 1,500 years, generation after generation of humans interacted with this underground system. And then, in 2004 BC, every single textual reference to the site and the gatekeepers abruptly and permanently vanishes from the historical record.
But you know what's really unsettling? The mystery of this site vanishing in antiquity is tragically mirrored by the erasure of the evidence in our modern era. Just as the texts vanished thousands of years ago, the physical proof of this world-altering translation has seemingly slipped right through our fingers today.
The timeline of this modern loss is incredibly frustrating. The fragments were first scattered during the chaos of the 2003 museum looting. Dr. Lemmers finally published his translation in 2009, which was immediately challenged and then mostly ignored by mainstream academia. Sadly, he died suddenly in 2011 before his extensive notes could be fully digitized. And by 2014, the physical tablet itself, MS3764, entirely vanished from the museum's catalog records. Just like that, the core piece of evidence is simply gone.
But here's the thing. The translation remains, and it leaves us with an undeniable set of coordinates pointing exactly 3.6 kilometers southwest of Eridu. If Dr. Lemmers was right, there is a 27-meter-deep, obsidian-lined shaft sitting completely untouched beneath a militarized desert zone right now, which leaves us with one massive lingering question. If we are ever actually allowed to dig beneath the sands of Dekar, what exactly will we find waiting for us in the dark?